Okay, everyone. Is anyone confident here?
No!
You want to start any side you like? You are the Grandmaster.
On the left is me, professional chess patzer, ThePawnslayer. Shaking my hand, Grandmaster Shreyas Royal, who, at the age of 15, recently became Britain's youngest chess Grandmaster.
At the age of just 15, Shreyas Royal has become the youngest ever British Grandmaster for playing chess from the age of 3. When you look at a board like this, what goes through your mind? Is this...
It's war on the board.
It's war!
It's war on the board.
He's going to play me. Well, not just me, but 20 other people at the Greenwich Peninsula Chess Club in what is known as a Grandmaster Simultaneous. Will any of us succeed? Will anyone be able to beat Shreyas? More importantly, will I be able to last more than 10 moves? Find out in the course of this video.
We've all got to feel confident. This is Greenwich Peninsula Chess Club against Grandmaster Royal. Someone's got to come through. I need someone to come through.
But it works. Shreyas is going to be playing white on all of these. When he's made his move, you've got until when he comes round again to make your move. So the moment that he approaches your board, you've got to make your move in front of him. So he has to see what your move is. When you've made your move, he will make his. It might be a little bit quicker than you are. As soon as Shreyas has moved, he'll move on to the next board, and the next, and the next, and the next. So you've got until he comes all the way round again to make your next move. Do not make it until he's alive, because he's going to want to see what move it is that you make. He needs to keep the pace up. So, you know, if you are having a tough time thinking about it, you will be at default if you keep him waiting too long.
You want to start any side you like? You are the Grandmaster.
Okay, so the game started with the move 1e4. So at this point, Shreyas needed to play all his other moves, and in response, I played the move pawn to e5, which does the same thing. It develops my pieces, and in response, he plays the standard move knight to f3. Now, I already had an idea of what sort of game I wanted to play, and you know, I've been playing a lot with this particular line online, and really when you're playing a simultaneous, you want to play stuff that you know really well, or at least you have some good ideas for. I did consider playing the move knight to c6, which is the more standard line. I've got some interesting lines against this. The problem with this is that I didn't really want to go into a fury heavy line such as the Italian game or the Spanish game against the Grandmaster. I didn't think that would be the best decision. So I decided to play something a little bit offbeat to maybe, hopefully, get my Grandmaster opponent at least kind of thinking for a little bit when he came to my board. So here I played the move pawn to d5, and here my opponent recaptured the pawn on e5. So against this move, I had a number of different options here. One that was interesting is taking here on e4, and this leads to some interesting lines after the move bishop to c4, where you can play this very crazy move, but a move that actually is kind of basically forced to play here for black, which is queen to g5, which aims to attack this pawn on g2, and then also attack this pawn on e5. But this has been known to kind of be bad for black, and white often gets some good play from this particular position. In particular, what he shouldn't do is take here with the knight on f7 and instead just take with the bishop. Taking with the knights gives a lot of counterplay for black. So just to show you that very quickly, something like this, you know, white should definitely not take on this square, as this will lead to some immediate disasters. So going back, let's say he saves the rook, then you've got some very pleasant lines here, bishop to g4, attacking the queen, and after maybe something like this, coming back here, you can take here, and then actually win back the knight. So this is a very pleasant line for black to play these up a whole piece. But obviously my opponent is not going to fall for those sort of things. I didn't fancy playing those as, again, the bishop takes lines are generally pretty good, and instead I played another move here that leads to a separate gambit known as the Maroczy gambit. So with bishop to d6, this gets on my kingside development, puts pressure on this knight, and leads to some very interesting play into white's kingside. So here Shreyas just played d4, and I then took on e4, which is the best move here. And I got a little bit worried at my opponent's next move, which was bishop to c4, which is the main line. And the reason why I'm a bit worried about this is that there is a particularly strong line here in this particular variation where white should secure quite a good game from this position. We almost reached that particular line. So I was already starting to worry a little bit, but I just thought, okay, well, I'll just play the best that I possibly can, and hopefully maybe, again, my opponent might make a mistake here. So I played the main move, which is bishop takes here, which stops this threat of this, and white should definitely not take back with a pawn, as this would lead to a simple simplification of the position, and black's doing fine. Now, I have this a lot online, a lot of people make a mistake at this point, but here after the bishop takes, white has a really good move here. This is what makes this line so strong, is a move queen to h5, which is what he played here. So basically dealing with this threat by coming up with a checkmating threat on f7. I should note here g6, I don't want to play. This would be a disaster, as this would lead to the bishop being lost with this nasty fork here. So what is the best move in this position? Well, I've got to defend f7 and also attempt to at least try and defend the bishop. So here I played the move queen to e7, which does both of those jobs. Again, this is still mainline theory. And here my opponent played the first move that I guess kind of surprised me, because I knew it wasn't the most popular move here, and that was d takes an e5. Now it says an accuracy here, but to be honest with you, when I looked at the Master Game database, actually this has been played a bit more times than I assumed. And well, now we're into what I would consider some unknown territory for myself. Just going back, just to show you why it probably would have been better to take with the queen, and after queen takes, pawn takes. Perhaps my Grandmaster opponent didn't want to go into an endgame where he could at least maybe try to basically outmuscle me in the middle game with the queen still on, so perhaps that's why he decided not to play that line instead. Okay, so here, as you can see, I was maybe kind of worrying a little bit because I'm kind of out of book already, and I played, I guess, the first mistake. And this is often happens when sometimes you go straight out of book. Often I like to think for a very long time, but I could see that Shreyas was moving around at some pace. I had some ideas of maybe developing a knight or something, but in the end I decided just to play g6, which just tried to aim to kick away this queen. And immediately my opponent just played the normal looking move queen to g5, and this is interesting because if I take, I'm just helping develop his bishop, and this actually makes it quite hard for me to develop my knight here on g8, and in the process doesn't help my rook getting out into the game either. So now I decided to come to my senses a little bit and just develop my knight to c6, which at least puts a bit of pressure on the e5 square. Here Shreyas just played bishop to b5. It says mistake here. I guess perhaps white should have just kept developing here. I think I was really worried about knight coming here, followed by either taking the pawn or even just jumping to d5 maybe. That would have been quite interesting to attack my position at some point. Maybe he wouldn't do it straight away, but certainly there's some things that I have to be worried about with that line. But instead he put his bishop to b5, which puts pressure on my pawn. It means then I have to deal with this threat because I don't really want double pawns on my queen side, because I want to cut a castle on that side and get my king safe without having pawn weaknesses. So now I just develop my bishop to d7, which defends the knight, means I don't have to have double pawns. And interestingly, my opponent just took this knight, which surprised me a little bit because it allowed me to just do a simple recapture here. So I was feeling quite relaxed. He came back to the board and I took the bishop here, getting ready to castle long in this position. Now my opponent just developed his knight to a good square, and I guess what was different about the position earlier with this knight coming here, he no longer has this threat of coming to d5, which would be quite annoying to my queen. So I was feeling quite comfortable. I felt like I'd maybe equalised, and you can see there with the Stockfish evaluation, it even gives me just a slight edge in this position. So now I just decide to castle long and get my king safe and get my rook onto this nice open file, and he decides to do the same by castling short side in this position. Now this is where I decided to make my kind of most bold decision here, and really I just wanted to find a way to get my knight into the game. As you can see here with this pawn on e5, it's stopping it from coming here. My queen's preventing it going here and it can't come to h6. So I looked at my pieces, I said, okay, well that's my worst piece. But in getting it into the game, I decided to kind of play a bit of a risky double-edged move here. And that was the following move, which is f5, which gets it kind of helps support the e4 pawn. But after Shreyas' next move, which hopefully a lot of you have seen, which is just taking en passant, it does leave my my pawn isolated, and but it allows me to develop my knight. So now I was able to get my knight into the game when he came back to my boards, and after this my opponent just developed his bishop to d3, getting it onto a reasonably good square and attacking that pawn on a7. Now this is, I had a few decisions really to kind of make in this position. Now I should first mention that I'm not really worried about him taking this pawn on a7. So let's just say, for example, I don't know, I played a move like this, for example. If he were to take here, I wouldn't be super worried by this, as I can play b6, which would trap the bishop, and I'd be able to pick it up quite simply, and he would have to end up probably either giving up his bishop for a couple pawns, which isn't so bad because it means my king would be a little bit exposed, but it's certainly not a great position to have to deal with. So I wasn't super worried by this, but I also needed to kind of find a way to get my pieces into the game. I did think about just playing maybe something simple like a6 though anyway, and then king to b8. I felt like these moves I'll need to play at some point anyway to kind of get my king nice and safe. And so I did wonder even b6 as well. I did think about to maybe allow a nice, I guess like a queenside fianchetto, gets my bishop maybe a bit safer in that position maybe. So I had all these ideas kind of running through my mind, and in the end I just decided, okay, well here's my worst placed piece. Following that principle, I decided to get it to the semi-open file by playing this move, and immediately you can see that the evaluation bar drops down. It is a blunder, and I was annoyed by this because now my opponent on his next move, I just kind of like did a bit of an exasperated gasp. He just plays bishop to c5, and my position is pretty much lost, and it was gutting, absolutely gutting when I faced this. I obviously missed this queen, was defending the c5 square, and I walked into this nasty skewer from my opponent. Okay, so when my opponent came back to the board, I just put my queen onto e6, which at least gets it out of danger, but now my opponent then just captured my rook here on f8. So obviously my next move was quite obvious here. I took back with my rook, but by playing my queen to e6, I maybe had not defended this rook as well as I should have really here, because now my opponent plays queen to c5, which is a really good move. It attacks this rook and also attacks this pawn on a7. So I basically walk from one fork or one tactic into another tactic. I would have been better maybe to have my queen come to f7 on the previous move, which would at least defend this rook here. So as he comes back to the board, I put my knight onto d7, which at least hits the queen and defends my rook on f8. And I guess my thought process was, after his next move, which was quite obvious, I could maybe reroute my knight onto b6 and maybe try and attempt to trap the queen here. Okay, so now I put my my knight onto b6, which now defends the a8 square. And as I say, I was thinking maybe there might be some ways to try and win this queen, maybe with some tactics, but my opponent was having none of that. He just moved his queen immediately to a3, and again hitting this rook again, which is really annoying, and he gets out of danger with a tempi, and also consolidates his position. He's now just up a whole clear 3 points of material and has an excellent game now. Okay, so now I need to get my rook out into the game somehow, so I put my rook onto f5, which at least I was maybe trying to attempt to do some cheapo stuff here, create some threats, just do something to try and get back into the position. I thought at least this was a very active square for the rook. In response to this, my Grandmaster opponent played a very unusual move here, which was knight to e2, which I didn't quite understand when he first played this move. So I decided, okay, I'm going to try and go on the attack here, and I played the move e3 here, which had some ideas of trying to crack open the position here and do some damage to white. And I think my strategy kind of worked here, as Shreyas now plays the move f3 to try and deal with some of that pressure that I may have been able to create. He'd obviously seen some complication that he wasn't too happy with. Now, for the eagle-eyed viewers here, you've probably noticed that I had clearly missed this particular threat here, and well, had I kind of seen this, I mean, actually Shreyas could have played on the last move. Perhaps he was a bit worried about some of the complications, and instead I just pushed this pawn. Again, I was trying to get some counterplay going, but of course it just runs straight into d4. Really just really stupid fork to go into, and my position is just completely collapsing now. I mean, this was already collapsing already, but you know, Shreyas is just really consolidating. I'm going to run out of pieces to try and attack his position now. So it was really annoying to have to face this particular move. So I'm going to kind of speed through the rest of the moves here, as there's not a huge amount left to see, but at least you can maybe see how a Grandmaster player is able to turn these big advantages into even bigger advantages and win the game very comfortably. So I put my queen onto e5, hitting the knights. He obviously took, I took back. I did think about defending it with a pawn, but I just didn't want to have any more weaknesses to have to worry about, and I thought at the very least, if I took the queen, maybe I could create some counterplay, but it doesn't really happen here. He takes back with the queen, and now g5 is very desperate. I'm just trying to open up some lines and maybe get lucky, but obviously this is all very much wishful thinking here. Here my opponent just puts his rook onto this open file now, which is just a very well placed piece, with the principle of, you know, improving your worst placed piece. That rook wasn't doing anything, and now it's having an active role in the game. I put my knight onto d5, which attacks the queen, but he now just moves his queen forward, trying to offer the trade. I clearly don't want the trade, because if I traded, I would have been completely lost then. And in case you're wondering, even if I do something like this is still losing. as well. Actually, it leads to a mate, in a very unfortunate mate in 2 here, which would have been very nasty to fall into. So I can't do stuff like this. But even if he didn't see this, just like this sort of stuff, he's still ahead in this position. So this would have not been a a potentially nice continuation to go into. So I put my queen back to f7. His queen came to e5, trying to create some counterplay. And what was annoying about this is it now also potentially threatening to come to h8, which would have been a really annoying check. So I tried to get my king safe by putting it onto b8 and just improving the king position a little bit. He now gets his other rook onto this open file, and you can see here there's too many things mounting up against me here. I made one more desperate attempt. I haven't really got anything in this position, so I just was playing very desperate moves here at this point, maybe looking at this sort of these sort of ideas, but of course this would fail pretty spectacularly. And actually this knight to f4 move was a big blunder, as now he just throws in a check, and after this I have to put my king onto a7, it's forced, and then just the immediate checkmate on a5. So you can see there that my position collapsed very, very quickly after the first tactic, and I kind of lost my head pretty quickly and lost this game pretty fast as a result. So slightly disappointing. I couldn't put up a better fight against Shreyas Royal, but still a very fun experience and a very enjoyable experience to take part in against a very, very strong, formidable player.